Hi you guys, it's me Chris and welcome back to the Doll Studio. So for the past couple of weeks, me and my significant other have actually been watching all of the American Girl movies. He had only ever seen Chrissa's American Girl movie, and so I took it upon myself to make sure we watched all of the American Girl movies because all of them are amazing, and I just wanted to come in and rank all of them because I have seen all of them now, and there were some ones that I hadn't seen in forever, so I want to refresh myself on their stories and the girls that American Girl decided to make movies about. So obviously, big disclaimer right now, I am going to be sharing some spoilers because I am talking about the movies and their plot lines and how they relate to the books, the characters, all of those things, how the girls acted out these characters that we all love. I also just want to reiterate that these are my personal opinions. These are my thoughts, my views on these movies. So of course, do not take any of this personally if I say something negative about one of your favorite American Girl movies. This is all just me getting my thoughts out there and talking about it. So again, these are my thoughts, my opinions, and I stand by my thoughts and my opinions. Okay, great. So just want to put that out there. Spoilers ahead. If you have not seen some of these movies, I highly do not recommend watching the rest of this video. But if you guys want to know my thoughts and opinions on all of the American Girl movies and how I rank them, then continue watching. So starting off with the first movie that American Girl ever did, let us start off with Samantha, an American Girl Holiday. So I'm a huge Samantha fan. She was one of the first dolls I ever wanted from American Girl, but she unfortunately was retired when I started getting into American Girl dolls. So of course I had to watch her movie and I had to read all of her books because I couldn't get the doll. I remember reading her books as a kid, and to be honest, this movie is a very accurate representation of what her books are like. Obviously some things are changed because it's an adaptation of her books, but Happy Birthday Samantha and Samantha Saves the Day aren't in this movie, which is completely fine. It doesn't really flow, and I think that the story wouldn't make sense if those two were included into the movie, but everything else is included. I think that Anna Sophia Robb, who if you guys do not know plays Samantha in this movie, does a fantastic job playing Samantha. I'm pretty sure this is one of Anna Sophia Robb's first roles as a child actress, and I think that she really doesn't animate the character of Samantha the way that some of the other girls in the movie line kind of do. She makes Samantha a very three-dimensional character as opposed to making her an animation of a character, if that makes sense. And I think that that's why so many people are drawn to her character, is the fact that she really does play Samantha in a very real way as opposed to animating her. This movie also does a really good job of talking about dark subjects, talking about the fact that Samantha is an orphan, she lost both of her parents, and then on top of that, Nellie is a maid working for the neighbors next door. Nellie's one sister at one point almost dies. Like, there's some crazy heavy stuff for kids in here. That's what I love about this movie, is that American Girl wasn't afraid to talk about some of these subjects, like children in factories. This is just a great overall movie, and I 110% recommend it to anyone who is looking to start watching American Girl movies. I don't find it corny. The script doesn't come off corny to me. I think that Samantha is an amazing character and her story is really intriguing, so highly recommend it. On a scale of 1 to this movie made me want to buy the doll, I have to say this movie made me want to buy the doll. I already have her. My boyfriend, after watching this movie, literally the next day bought Samantha and Nellie. I had an extra Nellie head and he sent her into the doll hospital, and now he has both of those girls. So trust me when I say this movie hits a punch if you're looking to fall in love with Samantha. In conclusion, a 10 out of 10 in my books. Okay. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Felicity, an American Girl adventure, because I have a lot of thoughts about this movie. First things first, I love Shailene Woodley. I think she's a phenomenal actress and she plays Felicity. I know no one on this God green earth has those bright emerald eyes that Felicity the doll has, so they definitely did the best that they could with this specific character and choosing an actress to look as close to the doll as possible. So I give her a pass there, and once again, she definitely creates a three-dimensional version of Felicity. However, for me personally, this movie is just so unbelievably dull. This is definitely one of those movies where it feels like so much is happening, but nothing is happening at the same time. It just feels very long, and most of the story's plot is just the fact that Felicity is wanting this horse, and the fact that she's fighting between being a loyalist or a patriot during the Revolutionary War, pre-Revolutionary War. I remember as a kid reading Felicity's books, and they really weren't anything crazy to me either, so maybe this is just Felicity's story altogether doesn't really intrigue me, but I definitely think Shane Lee did a great job with what she was given in regards to script and story, so definitely give her props for making the best that she could out of this character. But for the most part, this movie is one that I would honestly skip, and on a scale of 1 to making me want this doll, this kind of made me want to return my doll, if I'm being honest. Totally joking, but if we were going based off of story and wanting the doll, I would not fall in love with the doll from watching this movie, if I'm being honest. My significant other's favorite part of the movie was quite literally when the grandfather passed away, so if that tells you anything, this movie was not riveting or intriguing to us in the slightest, and we kind of were both on our phones the entire time because nothing about the plot made us intrigued or want to continue watching. I will say though, the costume design in this movie was really good, so I definitely give them props for the fact that they were able to recreate a lot of Felicity's outfits perfectly. This movie overall, I give it a 3 out of 10 in my book. Sorry, Felicity. Ooh. Anyway, moving on. Molly, An American Girl on the Home Front. Now, Molly was one of my original American Girl dolls that I purchased when I was younger, and I did read her books before I actually purchased the doll, so Molly's books are near and dear to my heart. I love Molly's books. She definitely is one of those characters that I fell in love with. I find her very witty, I find her very sarcastic, I find her very bratty at times, and something about her just is unapologetically nerdy, and I think that we all know that when it comes to the dolls. Like, she's just a big nerdy goofball, and I am obsessed with it. However, I don't know if it was the way that Maya Ritter, who plays Molly in this movie, portrayed Molly, but something about her comes off annoying at times in this movie. Also very ungrateful and selfish in this movie. There's an entire war going on. Her entire story takes place during World War II, and there's bomb raid drills. There's a lot of people going off to war. I mean, there's a lot of heavy content going around, and I feel like Molly is just kind of oblivious throughout this entire movie, wondering why she can't have a tea party if, I don't know, girl, there's an entire war going on. I completely understand though, she is 10, so I give her a pass there, but she does come off a little bratty at times and not willing to sacrifice for the war effort, which honestly, if I was put in that position, I probably wouldn't be either, and I'd probably be really salty about the war too. I also think that the actress that played Emily did a really good job of making her character believable. I think that both of these girls still did a phenomenal job at keeping these characters very real and not making them animated or Disney Channel-ish, if that makes sense. They're not over the top at any points, and I think that the direction for this movie was amazing. There are a lot of sad moments within the movie because obviously you're talking about war. There's a lot of things that are going on during the war that are unfortunate to be talked about, so it is a very heavy movie at times. Definitely a movie that I would say does a good job of staying true to what the time period was. This movie is an 8 out of 10 in my books, and if you are a fan of Molly and her books and her series, then I definitely would go out of your way to watch this movie. Okay, I feel like a lot of you guys are going to be very surprised by my thoughts on this next movie because I actually have admitted a million times before that I do not like this doll whatsoever, but this is a phenomenal movie and I cannot even lie right now. Kitt Ridge, An American Girl is actually one of the best movies that American Girl has ever produced. I can tell that they put a lot of budget into this movie and they really went out of their way to make sure that this story was compelling enough to have in theaters, which I don't think up until this point a movie from American Girl had come out in theaters. The entire cast for this movie is absolutely spectacular. There are so many celebrities in this movie, and I could just tell that they really went out of their way to find the perfect Kitt Ridge, and Abigail Breslin is the perfect Kitt Ridge. I mean, she is an amazing actress, and I personally love more of her adult work. I mean, My Sister's Keeper, I love her in Scream Queens. I have seen her in so many different things, so getting to go back and see her as a child actress, you can just tell that she is phenomenal and she knows what she's doing. Not a single point of this movie comes off corny, even in the slightest. Abigail Breslin had such a compelling performance as Kitt Ridge, so much to the point where I really sat there and thought to myself, is Kitt Ridge about to be one of my favorite American Girl dolls just because of the way Abigail Breslin played her? And my boyfriend and I quite literally had an existential crisis about this because we both looked at Kitt's collection for a hot second and were like, wait, do we just buy all of it? This movie has Joan Cusack, this has Stanley Tucci, Jane Krakowski, like so many amazing celebrities are in this movie playing the boarders in Kitt's home. And on top of that, Willow Smith, like a very young Willow Smith is in this movie. And the entire time you're watching this, you kind of forget that it's an American Girl movie because it's so captivating and also really shows the hardships of the Great Depression. That's what Kitt's story centers around. So I definitely 110% recommend this. It is so heartwarming. Honestly, I cannot stress this enough. If you are a fan of the Kitt Ridge doll, I highly recommend watching this movie. Please, 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 please watch this movie. It's on streaming. Highly recommend this movie. Definitely another 10 out of 10 in my book. Okay, let's just talk about it. One of my favorite American Girl movies that I used to watch and to this day basically can still recite, An American Girl, Chrissa Stands Strong. This whole movie consists of child actors who are quite literally on their A game. Chrissa's year overall in general, I think is so important. And I feel like if American Girl is gonna recycle any of the Girl of the Year ideas, they should definitely recycle the idea of bullying, where they talk about online bullying because a lot of kids are online these days and it's not so much in person. People do it over texts and on social media. So I think that this story is something so compelling. Bullying is definitely something that transcends time and it really isn't going to be going away anytime soon. I feel like all schools should really be showcasing this movie because it really tells kids how to deal with bullying, and it honestly does give you a lot of tools to deal with bullying, because I know a lot of people are scared of being considered tattletales when they're younger, and that's just not the case when it comes to bullying. And then on top of that, it also shows you how easily you can go from being a bully to being a friend. And I think that that's such an important thing that happens in this movie, is that the character of Sonali, she is one of my favorite dolls of all time, but also in the books, it's so amazing how she's able to go from being a bully with Tara and then becoming friends with Chrissa and Gwen. And then on top of that, Gwen being homeless was such a controversial thing. I remember back in 2009, everyone was talking about it. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe American Girl did a doll that is homeless. And it's like, these are real things that people go through. So I definitely am happy that this year American Girl really did a lot of deeper subjects and really gave kids the tools to deal with this thing that I think everyone in their childhood and in their high school life deals with, which is bullying. So I definitely recommend this movie. I also feel like a lot of the child actors in this movie are on their A game. Like I said in the beginning, I mean, Samantha Hanratty, who plays Chrissa, does a phenomenal job. Caitlin Denver, who plays Gwen, is amazing. And then the rest of the cast is really incredible in this movie. Not any of the scenes come off as cheesy, which is what I personally like, because when you're talking about a subject like bullying, it could very much be just a cliche thing of, oh, we should all just be nice to one another. But in this movie, it really shows how easy you can be a part of bullying, but also the strength it takes to not be a bully. And on top of that, what kind of strength it takes for you to deal with bullying and to really speak up and to stand up for yourself. And I feel like everyone in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. I am not a personal fan of the Chrissa doll, but this movie definitely makes me appreciate her and her story, and it really makes me appreciate the doll. So in my book, this is definitely a 10 out of 10, and you have to watch this if you are a fan of the American Girl movies. Now, these next three movies came out when I was actually having my departure from American Girl. I was no longer playing with my dolls, so the movies really weren't on my radar anymore, and the Girl of the Years weren't also on my radar anymore. But the next year following Chrissa in regards to movies was McKenna Shoots for the Stars. Now, McKenna was one of those Girl of the Years that I find very forgettable. These next three Girl of the Years I find very forgettable, and I'm sorry if these are your favorite Girl of the Year movies. So let's talk about McKenna's first and foremost. So McKenna's entire collection was basically about gymnastics. She's a gymnast and her whole movie centers around this. And basically during a practice one day, she ends up breaking her foot and she ends up having to be in a cast. Now, the good thing about this movie that I like is the fact that it mentions reading comprehension and how around the 4th grade, 5th grade area, a lot of kids kind of start to have reading comprehension problems. I find this to be a very relatable thing because even as a young kid, I had reading comprehension problems and I wasn't able to digest what I was reading. And so I had a lot of problems with reading because I wasn't understanding what it was that I was reading. And so McKenna basically has to face the fact that she she has this situation on her hands and she ends up having to get a tutor, which I honestly don't find to be embarrassing at all, because getting extra help does not mean anything on your character. So for me, I definitely love the way that this is also telling kids like, hey, having extra help doesn't make you weird, doesn't make you any different. You just need the extra help, and that's it, and that's completely fine. And I feel like having that conversation and normalizing it in this movie is perfect. This is a perfect way of doing it. However, the thing that I don't like about this movie is how it's starting to get into that Disney style acting that I don't particularly like, where the jokes start to get a little corny. It's very Disney animated, and that's the fine line that starts to happen right now in this movie, is that American Girl script writing is starting to fall into that unrealistic way that children speak to each other, and that's just not what I'm into. I like the more realistic style that the previous movies have had. This movie definitely at times made me cringe and very much falls into a cliche pattern of dialogue, and for me that just was a huge kind of turn off about this movie. Also, in no way want to discredit Jade Pettyjohn and her entire performance as McKenna. I think she did fantastic, and obviously the other actors that were in this movie did a great job as well. I just think that the script started to make them a little bit more caricature as opposed to centering them as real people, and that's where I think it starts to get cliche and corny and really cringy. So in retrospect, I do like the story and I do like what they're trying to communicate. I think the biggest thing for me was just the way that they did it in regards to the script. I think that everything else about the movie though, costumes, characters, all of that, I think are amazing. And at the end of the day, it is an American Girl movie, so I can't be that mad at it. But I definitely would give this a good 7 out of 10 in my book. The doll is definitely cute, so if you're a fan of McKenna and you are a fan of her collection, definitely go out of your way to watch this. I'm sure that you will definitely enjoy all of the gymnastics and her story. Now, I don't know what I despise most about the next movie. I can't tell if it's just the aesthetic of this character, or if it's the script, or if it's the fact that they literally had these young girls lip sync to 40-year-old women. But Sage Paints the Sky is definitely on the bottom of my list for American Girl movies. I do love Western culture, by the way. I just think that this is a very exaggerated version of Western culture. I mean, Sage looks like a 40-year-old woman, and I'm not saying this in regards to the actress. I'm saying that just the way she dresses, she looks like she's about to go to a hoedown at all times, and I for one do like that aesthetic, but something about the way that the costuming was done for this movie, it just seems so in your face that she is from the Western Hemisphere. This movie comes across very corny at times. This movie also comes across very childish and immature at times, and honestly I don't find Sage's story to be that compelling. I mean, it does give good life lessons like work for the things that matter to you and work for the things that you believe in, all of that stuff, bravery, courage, that's great, but you could find those in literally any of the other movies I have already listed in this list before, so I don't feel like Sage's story has really anything special going for it. This was our first girl of the year who was an artist, and honestly, that's great. I do think that art is a very big thing that people are into, so I definitely find her relatable on that level, but other than that, story-wise, I find her story very forgettable. Even right now, talking about this, knowing I've seen the movie maybe 3 weeks ago, I still can't really pinpoint a lot of moments that stuck out to me. I just feel like the biggest thing for me was the fact that Sage's story really doesn't have anything compelling going for it, and the drama behind anything in her story isn't that big that it really captivates you for the full duration of the movie. Sydney, girl, you did a great job. Sydney Fulmer plays Sage in the movie. I think you did good for what you were given, and honestly, I think that at this point it's a lot of direction and script being the problem as opposed to your acting abilities. So girly, good job. This movie is fine, but it's not up at the top of my list. Okay. Isabelle Dances into the Spotlight is actually an atrocious movie, and that's my review of it. I can't even go into it without getting physically upset about this movie. If this is your favorite movie, I'm so sorry, I'm about to upset you, but this movie was actually very hard to get through. My boyfriend and I actually took 3 days to watch it because we kept stopping in the middle of it and just being like, I can't continue. And then the next day we would start it back up, do another 20-30 minutes, and then we would just be like, this is still playing. I can't believe this. And then finally we finished it and we were like, okay. I just feel like the biggest thing about this is that the acting in this is so unbelievably unhinged. The mean girl in this is like extremely awful and mean, and then Isabelle herself just comes off really whiny at times. I feel like everyone in this movie took like 10 Red Bulls before shooting, and that's the only way I can describe the acting in this movie is like everyone is unhinged and the movie just lacks a pace. And I think that could also be a story thing, a directing thing, like something about this movie just doesn't have a rhythm to it, and it makes it very, 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 very just drag on and on and on and on, and I just could not take it. So I wouldn't recommend this movie. That's my thoughts. Honestly, if you want an in-depth review of everything that I think about this movie, like go see Atlee Katz Loves AG and AG Jitters video reacting to the movie, because everything that they say about this movie I completely agree with. This is one of those movies that I would not recommend to anyone at all. So that's it. I'm sorry if you like Isabelle. I'm sorry if you like Isabelle and her story, but this movie for me as a grown adult is just not it. My videos are not geared towards children, so hopefully we as adults can definitely have an adult conversation about this movie. But for me, I hope my stance on this movie is made aware. So that's my thoughts. We're moving on. Isabelle dances into the spotlight, can actually dance out of my life. Okay, moving on. Now, before Sour, before High School Musical, the series, the musical, the series, whatever it's called, there was just Graysters of Success starring Miss Olivia Rodrigo. Sorry, Miss Grammy Award winning Olivia Rodrigo. I personally am a huge fan of Olivia Rodrigo, so definitely do not take my words out of context, because I know there's a lot of Olivia Rodrigo fans out there who love everything that she does. However, you cannot avoid the fact that she did this movie. Like, her acting in this is very cringy at times, and she does this thing with her voice where she'll say something really loud and then go really soft, and then say something really loud and then go really soft, and she does that throughout the entire movie. And I don't know if it's just me having been an actor in the past, but you can tell that she drops the volume of her sentences at the end, and it's very noticeable in this entire movie, and something about it just really irks me. But she's so adorable. I love her. I also love the fact that they gave her blue contacts when she naturally has brown eyes, yet everyone else in the American Girl movie realm hasn't been forced to wear colored contacts for their characters, because when you really think about it, Isabelle's eyes are green, not blue, so she should have had colored contacts. And then Leah altogether doesn't even look like her character. So the fact that they had Olivia Rodrigo literally put in bright blue contacts in her brown eyes is so funny to me, and it's very jarring when you notice it. Also, she doesn't have freckles, which is completely fine. I'm not someone that is a huge stickler on making sure that the actress that plays the character looks exactly like the doll, but this is one of those instances where they did a pretty good job of doing it. Story-wise, her story is a little outlandish. I mean, her winning Master Chef Junior is a little out there, and then on top of that, her friends in this entire movie are very bipolar and really upset me. The entire time my boyfriend and I were watching this movie, I was like, she needs to find new friends, because my friends, if they talked to me this way, would not be my friends. So that definitely annoyed me, but for the most part, it's a really cute story, and there are obviously some really cheesy moments, but it's not anything that isn't bearable. So I'm definitely glad that this movie pulled back on the animative acting, and Olivia Rodrigo really held her own in this movie, and I definitely loved the way that she did Grace. So this definitely made me fall in love with the doll. I also feel like the Paris theme wasn't overdone and it wasn't cheesy, if that makes sense. I mean, there were some musical moments that I felt like didn't need to be in there. I think that the people that sing in the streets are really, really nice, and the music is very, very pretty, so I'm not mad at that, and it doesn't come off cheesy. I think that it just comes off more so random than anything else. But for the most part, I think that this movie is great and I do love it. I just think that this is definitely, again, in the acting style of Disney, but it's not so in your face, and it's definitely still very lighthearted. This movie is definitely a 9 out of 10 in my book, and would highly recommend this to anyone that likes the Grace doll. Leah to the rescue extremely surprised me. I mean, this was a movie that I didn't think I was gonna see myself enjoying, only because it really is a huge pet peeve of mine that Maggie Elizabeth Jones, who plays Leah, doesn't even remotely look like Leah. I mean, Maggie has freckles throughout this entire movie, and her hair in the light looks so red and ginger, and Leah is so caramelized and has like light blonde highlights in her hair, so the two don't even remotely look the same. And from my understanding, I don't think that the book and the movie connect whatsoever, but I could be completely wrong. All I know is that the movie was really well done, and it was captivating from when it started all the way to the end. And at the end of the movie, my boyfriend and I were like, wait, that was an American Girl movie? It's definitely a captivating story. Leah goes to Brazil to find her brother who has been missing, and she takes it upon herself to actually like solve the mystery, and it's really cool. It's a really good story, and I would definitely go out of my way to watch this one again. This movie is not cheesy in the slightest, and I find it actually very mature for American Girl, just because it's not acted out in an immature way. There's no dad jokes, there's no corniness. This movie is very good. It's thrilling at times, and it deals with the idea of endangered animals and poachers and all of that stuff. So if you're an animal lover and you like Leah and her books and you like the collection that Leah has, I definitely would watch this movie. I highly recommend it. This is definitely on the top of my list for favorite American Girl movies. I will at a further point in the future talk about the Amazon movies like Melodies and Mary Ellen's, but from my understanding, they're not accurate representations of their stories, so I didn't really want to deep dive into those movies as well because I want to go into the full feature-length films, so that is why they are not featured in this list. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just gonna rank all of the movies from the bottom to the top being my favorite American Girl movie of all time. So without further ado, let's get started. At the bottom of my list, we have Felicity, an American Girl. Extremely boring to me, and the content isn't really worth the watch, if I'm being honest, so she is at the bottom. After Felicity, we have Isabelle. I just could not stand her movie. I think the acting in it was overdone, was very animated, and just more so annoying than an enjoyable watch. In 8th, we have Sage Paints the Sky. I think that this movie is fine. It's very animated, very corny, and I think that Sage is a 40-year-old woman, but for the most part, it's fine. It's not the worst. In 7th, I hate to do this, but Molly, an American Girl on the home front. I think that the performance on Maya Ritter's part is probably why I ranked it a little bit lower. It's good, but it's not my favorite of the American Girl original movies, so I just had to rank it where it is. So sorry. In 6th place, we have McKenna's movie. I think this movie is really good, and honestly, I did enjoy it. I do feel like there are cheesy moments in this movie, but for the most part, I definitely did enjoy watching this movie. In 5th place, I have Graysters of Success. I definitely enjoyed this movie. I love Olivia Rodrigo. I think this movie is really heartwarming and really fun, so I definitely put this in 5th place because of that. I think she's a perfect representation of the doll and her collection, so I definitely put this in its ranking because I saw it fit. In 4th, we have Leah to the Rescue. This is a movie that I surprised myself by putting up so high in the list, but I definitely recommend it. I think it's really riveting, and I think that it's an action-packed movie that will keep you on your seat the entire time that you're watching it, so highly recommend this movie. In 3rd place, I gotta give it to her, Samantha, an American Girl Holiday. This movie is phenomenal through and through. I think Anna Sophia Robb does a phenomenal job. I think the story is great. I don't think anything is overacted. Just overall, a great story, and definitely something that everyone in the family would be able to enjoy. In 2nd place, we have Kitt Ridge, an American Girl. This movie really surprised me, you guys. This movie is amazing. You have to go out and watch this movie. Kitt Ridge, an American Girl is one of my favorite American Girl movies now. It is so good. Made me cry at the end. I definitely recommend this. Please go out and watch it. Now, the movie I ranked number 1 that I think that everyone who has watched this video should go out and see after this video is done is Chrissa, an American Girl Stands Strong. This movie is perfection, you guys. Perfection. Everything about this movie is amazing. I cannot stress it enough. I love this movie with all of my heart. I think it's so sweet. I think it's deep. I think it's interesting. I am so behind this movie. I think that it's very important that people watch this movie. It's so good, you guys. I cannot stress it enough. And it is the epitome of what I think American Girl movies should be like, where it's well acted, where the story is great, and it really has a central message that is through and through throughout the entire movie, and it really sticks to it. I cannot stress it enough. Go watch this movie if you have the time. If you can find it, it's on streaming services. Go watch it, take some time, and enjoy that movie, because you definitely, I for sure know you will. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. My name is Chris. You guys can follow me on my Instagram, which is at The Doll Studio by Chris. Please make sure you guys like this video, comment down below, and let me know your thoughts on these movies, and let me know if you agreed with some of my opinions, or if you disagreed. Let's have a discussion on it. Of course, you guys can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. So sorry this video was so long. I just had to get my opinions out there, but I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.